Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gods and goddesses, to the Golden Age Gurus podcast, your source for regenerative, entrepreneurial, and eco-friendly global solutions using ancient future strategies that focus on healing ourselves, our community, and the planet. Now, it is truly an honor to introduce your host, Baba John.
Greetings, Golden Agers. It's Monday morning, June 13th. I've got an exciting guest today, Oberon Zell, a real-life Dumbledore who runs the Grey School of Wizardry, patented the paleoscience technique of creating a unicorn. We're going to get down to the bottom of, are unicorns real? Is magic real? How do you compile your magical knowledge? All these things Oberon's going to talk about. It's great to have him, and enjoy. This show's brought to you on Patreon, where creators are supported by their tribe. For the cost of a latte, you can support the show and my advocacy around fringe legal topics ranging from zero waste and Bitcoin to matters of spirit. I'm committed to serving mankind by providing thousands of years of ancestral wisdom. Learn from my gurus, join my network, and get exclusive content. We have a free tier so you don't have to worry about money, a support tier for just a few bucks, and an apprentice level for aspiring Jedi interested in my mystery school and nature-based ministry. We have a VIP business tier for CEOs who want their own wizard. Just remember, King Arthur had a Merlin and Queen Elizabeth had her John Dee. Historically, I've charged way more as a consultant, but while I wrap my last year of law school, I'm willing to help just to get this new platform going. You'll have access to me with the Voxer app and get access to the Advocacy Launchpad and Discord. Sponsorship is sold separate. If you're interested, message and visit patreon.com, patreon.com/Golden Age Gurus. Follow for free and support if you can. Oberon Zell, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John.
Last time I saw you was in Guatemala, but I ran into your girlfriend at the Scarborough Fair last year.
Ah, that's great. I'm so glad you saw Donna there. That's wonderful.
Yeah, my kids got some art from her.
All right.
Got a magical owl painting on the wall.
Yeah, she's going to be visiting me in about a week or so, so we'll have a little time together again this summer.
Beautiful. Where are you right now?
I'm in the state of Washington, about 30 miles northeast of Seattle.
Nice. So you're close to rainforest then?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, it's been raining here constantly, while the rest of the country is either in floods or storms or baking heat. It's been really just rainy here, which is nice.
Beautiful. So you are an official wizard. I can vouch, and I've read many of your books. I've got your art, which I also love. And I have
some of it tattooed on your arms.
Yeah. I even have some of your artwork on my arms. So, I'm a fan, and thanks for joining me and having a talk. I thought we would just tell the listeners about your life, which is fascinating, and maybe if you can just give a little snapshot of yourself for the people that don't know you, and then we can, I'll ask you some questions that I already sent you some, but I got some more. So
I'm all for that. Well, gosh, it's really hard to say anything about my life without having to take up the entire time with that alone. I've had a very interesting life, and 40 years of it was with the incomparable Morning Glory, who was my life mate and co-conspirator and partner in crime for many, many adventures until she died of cancer 8 years ago. And since then, I have really not been partnered, but I've continued to be productive, writing more books and stuff. Gosh, what have I done? I founded the Church of All Worlds in 1962, which we incorporated in 68. I was the first person to claim the identity of pagan for both myself, my religion, and my church, which was quite groundbreaking. And Morning Glory and I spent 8 years homesteading in a hippie community in Northern California of about 100 families on 6,000 acres of land. We raised unicorns. We did a diving expedition to New Guinea in search of the sources of the mermaid legends successfully. She coined the term polyamory, polyamorous, in 1990, which began another whole movement. We've had so many amazing adventures with Donna, whom you met, as you mentioned, in Guatemala, as well as at her fair, Scarborough Fair in Texas. I've been all over the world and had many wonderful adventures with her, of which you've seen a little bit of. So, I've written a number of books, over a dozen books currently. I'm still busy and active. Oh, and I founded the Grey School of Wizardry, and which I'm the headmaster, and that was in 2004. So, and that's still going strong. Oh, and Green Egg magazine, I founded what became the major pagan publication, Green Egg magazine, founded in 1968, published in printed copy up until the turn of the millennium. And then since then, it's been an online e-zine, but it's still going strong after all these years. That's just a few things, but maybe it'll give a bit of an introduction.
Yeah, and you mentioned the unicorn thing, which you basically patented a way to grow one horn on a goat. Yep. And you're just to clarify, you're talking about the goat unicorns that the circus was buying from you.
Right. Well, as opposed to what other kind? I mean, if you look at all the old images of unicorns, you'll note that they all have the cloven hooves and a beard. And the trick was figuring out what species in ancient times had been, in fact, developed into unicorns. And there was a number of them. In the most ancient times, it was bull unicorns. You see from back in the Bronze Age, many, many depictions of single-horned bulls, usually shown fighting lions, because that's what unicorns were developed for, was to be warriors, to be able to defend the herd against predators, lions and wolves. And many horned species have been developed into unicorns over the ages, but the process has always been a closely guarded secret, which has been lost and rediscovered several times throughout history. But there have been taurine bull unicorns, there have been arine ram unicorns, there have been chervine deer unicorns, and of course the classic caprine unicorns that you see on all the tapestries from the Renaissance period, the goat unicorns. That's the ones that we set out to reproduce, and we did that precisely. The animals that we created are absolutely straight out of those tapestries.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that the reason they're so aggressive is because the technique makes more air go into their brain or something like that.
Well, the air doesn't go into their brain, but the horns incorporate the sinuses, which go form kind of a honeycomb structure inside the horns. It's different than normal horns, and that increases the sense of smell. Also, the positioning of the horns changes the structure of the skull significantly, and it allows a further development of the frontal lobes of the brain than the two-horned structure, which basically compresses the brain in the frontal areas. So the animals are really smart. The balance of weight of the horns growing out of the front of the head as opposed to growing backwards, which is the way normal horns develop, develops an increasing musculature of the neck and shoulders. So the animals are much more powerful looking. If you compare the images of unicorn with the pictures of, say, goats are noted for little kind of skinny necks, and unicorns are noted for big, powerful necks, which is, why they're often compared with horses, which have that big, powerful neck. But the horse factor was never really part of real unicorns. Horses don't have horns. And all the unicorns ever have always had cloven hooves, which identifies them as, typical horned animals,
Right. Yeah. So, is magic real or is magic science? What's your take on magic?
Well, that's an interesting question. Science and magic were never distinguishable throughout the most of history. It wasn't until the 1660s, with the development of the Scientific Academy, that a distinction was made between science and magic. And they separated out astronomy from astrology, physics from metaphysics, and so on down the line. But at some ultimate level, magic can be understood as science that we don't really yet have explanatory theories for. But frankly, up until fairly recent times, we didn't have explanatory theories for lots of things. I mean, gravity, magnetism, germ theory, nuclear theory, how the sun worked. None of these things. There was no possible way to know it. The cosmos itself, cosmology, none of these things had any theoretical basis until the 20th century. So many of them were lumped into the field of magic and superstition. What we've seen since the 1930s has been a revolution in science with the new field of quantum physics. And quantum physics has opened up a whole new perspective that, in fact, does encompass magic. And the rules, the laws of quantum physics, particularly the concept of entanglement, are indistinguishable from the laws of magic. The magical principles simply laid out the way things worked, and then quantum physics came along with some explanatory theories to explain it. And so now, when people ask about magic, I always refer them to quantum physics,
Right.
which in the early days, people like Einstein regarded as magic. Einstein famously referred to a quantum entanglement as spooky action at a distance,
Well, I had another elder of mine that is pretty powerful, written a lot of books, named Baba Falakun. And he calls our practice, which is African ancient tradition, he calls it paleo science. He started to call it paleo science. And I thought that was a good way to get the point across,
Yes, I like it. That's very nice.
Yeah.
In my work and in my teachings, I have come to a definition of magic that seems to be pretty functional, although there are many different versions and many different explanations of what it is. The definition of magic that I like to work with is probability enhancement. And that also ties into quantum physics, which is all about probability. So I think we're getting there. I think we're moving towards a reconciliation of science and magic as we're developing more knowledge and becoming aware. We're beginning to recognize some things that our ancestors worked with, but they did not have the laboratories and scientific theories to explain the stuff. They just figured out what worked.
Yeah, when you were talking about the unicorn, it made me just think, that's pretty much paleo science.
It is. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I know one of your most valuable and hard to get books is the one with the bestiary. What's What's the name of the one where you go into all the crypto beasts?
Yes, Wizard's Bestiary, and it's been out of print for a few years, but I am just right now completing the final updating and editing for a second edition that
Nice.
will be out probably within a month. And so look for the second edition of the Bestiary. Yeah. I've added an additional chapter, a few more pages, done a lot of editing and updating, and I'm really pretty excited about this new release of that. So look for it, the Wizard's Bestiary.
Yeah, I'll definitely look for that, and the kids will love it. I also really, probably the book that I've used the most is your Wizard's Apprentice book, which I haven't used in tandem with the Wizard School, but I assume you use it for that. But yeah, so I highly recommend the book, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes. But how are you interfacing as the headmaster? Because I think of you as a real world Dumbledore.
Well, I have been called that, and I think that's probably appropriate, since I am actually the headmaster of the Grey School of Wizardry. I'm planning on retiring this fall upon the occasion of my 80th birthday, and passing the headmaster torch to the next in line of succession. So that will be nice. But I've held the role for a long time. The Grimoire was the first book I wrote, and that came out in 2004. And the school was kind of an outgrowth of it. As I was writing the book, I was developing a textbook, really, for magic in general, for the next generation was the idea. Yeah. And I worked with the Grey Council of mages and sages of our time. And together, our task was to create a compendium of all the magical lore that was fundamental and basic for the next generation. We wanted to create basically a textbook for a real life Hogwarts, inspired by that would be the book that we all wish we could have gotten a hold of, and we started on the path, and the book that we want to make sure we get next time around in our next incarnation, when we're ready for it. So that was what we set out to do. And in the process of it, I realized that this was really just an introduction, a foundational book, and there was so much more to go. And I wanted to refer the readers to where they could go for more information. I figured there would be some online schools or something, and I found there wasn't any. There really wasn't anything. So that became the next task, was to create the school for which the book would be a textbook. And that's been very successful. The Grey School is phenomenal. It's got 16 departments and over 500 classes, and a couple dozen remarkable teachers, and about 300 students. And the courses are in 7 levels, leading up to a journeyman certificate of journeyman wizardry. And it's just terrific. I'm very, very pleased with it, and very proud of the students and faculty that we have. They are wonderful.
Yeah, I definitely think it's amazing what you've done with all that, and we're lucky to have you on the planet, and providing that information to people. So you mentioned a new book about Gaia that you already published it, or you're about to publish it?
Oh, it's already out, and I'm really excited about it. This is the culmination of my teachings over the past 50 years. It's called Gaia Genesis, Conception and Birth of the Living Earth. And it goes clear back to Hesiod's Theogony in ancient Greece in the 8th century BCE, and it goes right up to present times. It expands the concept of the earth as a living organism from all the different sources and references, from Hesiod to Leonardo da Vinci to modern scholars, and of course my own work as well. It's profusely illustrated. It's out in both paperback and hardbound. It's my first book to come out in hardback, and I'm really very excited about it. This is the one, if one book of mine really survives the time and all, and future generations want to look back to what it was I was talking about, This was the one. I really hope everybody reads it. And you can check any of my books easily enough. Just plug in my name to the book section of Amazon.com, and they'll all come up. And you can read the reviews and the explanations and all that stuff. It's all there, all online.
So what about your you sold me this symbol that was a combination of an ankh and a pentagram and a caduceus. What's that word?
Caduceus.
Yeah. And you had a cool name for the trilogy there combined.
Yeah, I call it a pencaduce. I struggled for a while trying to come up with the design and then eventually a name for it. That was a little bit trickier, but pencaduce covers it really nicely, and that really explains what it is. And the whole point of it was to develop a symbol that expressed wizardry in the Western traditions.
Mm-hmm.
The Kemetic traditions of Egypt, represented with the ankh, the Greek traditions represented by the pentagram, and of course the Hermetic traditions represented by the caduceus, and all together into one design. They really represent the wisdom teachings of the Western world, and I'm very pleased with that. Everybody likes it.
Yeah, and you know what? I seriously can't find mine, so I need to get another one.
Okay, well, good.
Maybe you can sign a copy of your new book and send me a package, and I'll think about it.
Well, I don't have copies here. I mean, I'm not the distributor. I don't carry a stash of them around, except when I go to a festival and I have some shipped to it. But if someone buys one of my books and wants me to sign it, they will have to mail it to me, with a return address envelope, which I will happily sign and return to them, yourself as well. But I just don't have. I'm not the distributor here.
Okay. Well, how do I replace my Pinkadoos? Would that go through you, or do you have a drop shipping situation or something?
No, you can order that online. If you go to the Grey School website, grayschool.com, they have a store there that carries a lot of my stuff that's related to the school, including the Pencaduce. So you can get that. Beautiful. You can also you can order not only in a pendant, but also T-shirts and designs on all kinds of different stuff. Because it's all over the place there.
Yeah, I actually also got a map of the 9 realms of Norse. I think it's beautiful artwork. I tell you, you made such a cool map of the Midgard and Valhalla and all that. And I framed it and I put it in the Guatemala house. So every time people go to the bathroom and take a morning poop, they get a lesson in Norse.
Well, that's great. I'm delighted with that. I had so much fun.
Artwork.
Well, most of my artwork is illustrative. The Yggdrasil drawing that you're referencing was originally designed when I was developing a book on the afterlives of different cultures. It's called That Undiscovered Country, a traveler's guide to the afterlife. And I created a number of images and maps of the afterlives of different cultures for that. But that one was the one that I had the most fun with. I really enjoy doing that stuff. And it's all about illustrating concepts. So my books and my writings, and especially the Gaia book, are just filled with my illustrations to convey the idea in imagery in addition to the words. So I like doing that. They say one picture is worth 1,000 words, and I really take that seriously. I kind of got on my professional art career by illustrating science fiction stories back in the 60s for science fiction publications. And so I still have a few of those left around, and periodically I plug them into things. There's a few of my old illos from the 60s and 70s are in the Gaia book, because I'm talking about stuff that goes back to that period, as well as lots of new stuff. I really just enjoy creating art that carries a message. I'm not interested in abstract art or landscapes and things like that. I'm interested in art that tells a story of some relevance, points I'm trying to make.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a big fan. Love it. And my question about that is for an wizard such as, you know, I'm definitely thinking about a grimoire. And do you have any tips for organizing a book like that? Any techniques that you can recommend as far as organizing that chaos and writing a grimoire?
Well, I'll tell you how I do it. I mean, you know, I don't really know what other authors do, although I did get a few lessons from Robert Heinlein in our correspondence. And basically, he would just keep a bunch of 3x5 cards, and whenever he got an inspiration, he would jot it down on a 3x5 card and stick it in a box, labeled whatever book he thinks it should have gone to.
Our next sponsor is MINTBUILDER. Have you ever heard of the book, The Richest Man in Babylon? If not, you can check it out in the bookstore. But it's a classic business book that reveals the key to personal wealth. I'm going to give you that key, and it's basically saving 10% every month. So the way I like to save is in gold and silver with MINTBUILDER. I've been using MINTBUILDER for years and have attained master status. I have created a system where my savings plan pays for itself by signing up people who want to save and start a silver bank account, which ships physical coin out every month based on their budget. The author of The Richest Man in Babylon says that magic number is 10% of your income. Now you can build your legacy with the best pricing on metal assets while helping the nonprofit Feed My Starving Children, which uses 90% of donations for food to stop malnutrition in over 100 countries around the world. Thank you for considering MINTBUILDER to build your wealth and feed hungry children. You can go to mintbuilder.com/102026, or you can go to preciousmetaltrends.com/102026. Complete the form and claim your free silver bullion bar just for taking our short tour and brief survey. Yeah, so what the last thing I heard was you were telling me about keeping a 3x5 card and putting it in a box, and then it went out.
Oh, that was quite a ways back then. You really lost a lot of what I had to say.
Yeah.
Oh, basically, you were just asking what the process is that I use for writing a book. And I don't use the 3x5 cards. That's what Robert Heinlein used. But what I do is I get ideas for books. I make a folder for that with that title on my laptop. And then as I get ideas, I write them down in little notes and stick them in and expand on some of them. And eventually, when I get enough material accumulated, I start organizing it in an outline form. And the outline eventually becomes a kind of a chapter outline. And then it's a matter of fleshing out the chapters as they develop. But an important part of developing a book concept is a proposal that you have to create to send off to a publisher. And there are some really good online sites on how to write a book proposal. And I found that in doing so, which has been invaluable to me, just incredibly so. This is how I really got my first book launched. In writing the proposal, you really do lay a foundation for the book itself, because you have to write an introduction, explanation, a biography. You have to look up other books in comparable areas, do some research, develop a chapter outline, and all these things. And in the process of putting together the proposal, you really have the foundation for a book. And then it's just a matter of filling in the blanks until you're satisfied. And I spend years on some of my books. The Grimoire, which is my first one, I spent 2 years on. And the Gaia book, which just came out, it's got 50 years of collections of notes and materials that went into it. The Bestiary, which was the most fun book that I ever did, really began with an idea back in the mid-70s that Morning Glory and I were having a conversation following the the movie, The Last Unicorn. And we thought it would be kind of fun to write a book on the true stories behind mythical beasties. And that research eventually led us to discover the secret of the unicorn, which diverted our attentions from the book for a few years while we actually went out and raised unicorns. And eventually we got back to it and finished the book, and the book came out in 2006, and it's really been the most fun one. And as I said, the first edition is now out of print, and the second edition is in the final stages of the process. All I have yet to do is the indexing, and that may very well be out within a month or so. So that's pretty much all I can tell you about my process. I think every author has their own process, and it's a good idea to ask them.
Do you like wake up in the morning and try to write for like an hour, or do you do it at night? Like what's that look like?
Well, I wish I could be that organized. I wake up in the morning with ideas that I get in my dreams, and I usually spend some time in the morning before I actually get out of bed, just lying there in that liminal state. It's my meditation time, and kind of organize my thoughts. And then when I get up, I write them down, ideas. But I generally spend my first time in the morning just dealing with email and messages and Facebook stuff. And there's this huge volume of communications that really don't have anything to do with progressing my writing, but are really important for me to do, like this podcast, for example. So my morning is generally spent with that, communicating with the rest of the world. And then in the early afternoon, after lunch, I hopefully will have some time if I don't have something else scheduled. And that's pretty much when I do most of my actual writing. And then in the evening, after dinner, I generally take a break and just watch TV or a movie or something, So that's kind of my general schedule, unless I have a date, of course, which changes everything.
Yes, a date with two polyamorous witches, right?
Yep. That's the best kind.
Yeah. So you're over there in the Northwest, and I've heard some of your beast theories. I'm wondering about Bigfoot, because I'm in East Texas, and they've had a lot of sightings out here. And I watched a video. I can't remember this guy's name. I'll come back to it. But it basically posited that Bigfoot is actually the Neanderthal. If you just put hair on a Neanderthal, it's a Bigfoot.
That's not true, actually. Neanderthals were about the same size as we are, about 6 feet average, somewhat less, 5 to 6 feet. And Bigfoot is generally reported as being over 8 feet tall, and Neanderthals do not fit that description. Nor does the physiology of the footprints, which indicate a much longer talus, the heel bone, and the balance and everything are quite different. There's a double ball in the big toe. None of this matches Neanderthal anatomy. Neanderthal anatomy physically was pretty much identical to our own. And in fact, the Neanderthal genome survives very strongly in Pacifica through the Denisovian branch that took the Neanderthals to the Far East ahead of the wave of the Cro-Magnon takeover, which happened in Europe and stuff, and it just pushed the Neanderthals further and further east, and then into what eventually became Indonesia, when it was all one solid landmass, when the sea levels were lower. And then the sea levels rose and isolated Indonesia and Australia from the rest of the world. But by that time, the Denisovan branch of the Neanderthals had already reached there. And today you still see a strong Neanderthal traits in the Melanesian peoples of Indonesia and Australia, and particularly New Guinea and Australian Aboriginal things carry a very strong component of the Neanderthal gene. And it certainly was reflected in their physiology, their facial features primarily. But they're still modern people. Neanderthals are modern people. And there's no indication so far that the Bigfoot fits any of that criteria. We have no indication of language or culture or artifacts or clothes or anything made by them. But I do feel strongly that the evidence supports the existence of the Bigfoot genome. I personally identify strongest with the identity of the Bigfoot Sasquatch with the Paranthropus, which was a branch of hominids that evolved along with our side. They were just much bigger and more robust, and they totally fit the description of the Bigfoot. If there's many reconstructions of Paranthropus that you can look up, and the physiology, the hip structure, which is massive, much bigger hip bones, everything, all the proportions and all that we have been recording from people who have reported Bigfoot, and especially from the analysis of the footprints, which is what we have the most of, really matches the Paranthropus, not the Neanderthals.
Wow. So you think it's a relic hominid, just a different one?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Yeah, the guy came to mind that did that presentation. His name's Lloyd Pye. He died, but if you YouTube Lloyd Pye Bigfoot, woo, he'll blow your mind. But maybe he was off a genome. But,
well, many people have theories, and the theories are only as good as the evidence that can back them up until we have something more solid. Right now, our solid evidence is almost entirely footprints and a few samples of hair that have been identified as hominid, but not specified as any species, because we don't actually have any samples of the hair of the Paranthropus or earlier hominids, because all we have is bones, and fossilized at that. So there's not much even real DNA. Our DNA from the Denisovan branch of the Neanderthals is only from a couple of teeth that have been found. That's pretty much it. Except for, of course, the modern people who carry it. And we have been able to identify that. The work on identifying modern human genomes has actually been able to reveal the existence of the continuing Neanderthal Denisovan genome, which is really neat.
So I want to, you were just mentioning that you get up and do the sleep, work. But I was just going to ask you if you do anything specific to help your dreaming process or astral efforts. Like, do you have any kind of a sleep/dream ritual to help remember what happens, or to even get into an astral situation? Like, can you talk on that?
Well, I don't think that my practice fits the formal requirements that many people do who are really official meditators and all that stuff. But I do a lot of dream work, and I've developed this over the years and gotten quite good at it. Some of the key elements are that I always take 3 milligrams of melatonin before I go to sleep, about an hour before I go to sleep, which helps to vivify the dreams and make them more memorable. And then I always keep a glass of water beside the bed, and I take a good drink before I go to sleep. And then periodically and during the night, I'll wake up to go pee, maybe once or twice, and take some more water. And the reason for that is that when you awaken in the midst of a dream, which is what you do when you have to wake up and pee, is that you will remember the dream. So it's important then to keep some way of recording it. So keeping a notepad beside the bed is very helpful. For people who are really good at it, keeping your cell phone that you can record something is good. So that's that point when you just awaken from the dream that you can most vividly remember it. And I've developed a lot of skill at being conscious in my dreams, what we call lucid dreaming. And in that, I will pursue a question. I'll go to sleep with a question in my mind. I'll get all obsessed about something and really where I'm totally focused on it, and then I'll sleep on it. And it's what they say, well, better go sleep on it, and the answer will generally come, and whether it's an image like the Pankadusi mentioned earlier, which again came to me in a dream, or the technique for creating unicorns, which came out of a dream, or many ideas on how to illustrate or make a point. All these things come in dreams. The trick is being able to pay attention to them and remember them. And the melatonin and the water are the two little secret ingredients I've found that work for me.
Good one. I've also heard mugwort, I think.
Yes, mugwort in a dream pillow is used by many people. I haven't really done that, but I hear it's a good thing. and maybe I'll take it up. But I'm doing fine with what I've got. But there are many techniques, and you can look them up. I've got a whole chapter about that in the Grimoire.
Nice. So you're teaching that at the school, I assume.
Yes, we have classes in dream work in the school.
Nice. I remember seeing that you guys built, like a Second Life virtual campus way before the metaverse was a thing. Or are you guys planning on taking that into the crypto space, or how's that going?
Well, we did develop a Second Life campus, a virtual campus, which is pretty cool, and people really enjoy it. We've had that going on now for, quite a few years, about 10 years, I think. And that's been very successful, really beautiful campus, a lot of possibilities. We're also now have a physical campus at our headquarters in upstate New York, which we're expanding and developing. Right now, we're working on building the new dormitories for the conclave, which is coming up in July out there. I'll be our second conclave at our facility. It's in Whitehall, New York, the little town of Whitehall. And so we're doing that. I don't know anything about the crypto world. That's really not my area. I write the books, I teach stuff, but the technical things of making stuff happening in the virtual world is a little bit beyond my pay level.
Yeah, I guess the difference between, and I have to look and see what Second Life is doing. But yeah, you know how you can play a game and get coin or points, it puts a little more reality into the money as far as value, so there's the metaverse is they're calling it Web3, so the internet's just evolving from what the social login to logging in with a wallet, basically a crypto wallet. So the internet, what you're going to see is websites start making you log in with your crypto, with your Bitcoin address instead of your Facebook address, but I've also seen that they're figuring out ways to make that simpler to onboard new people into the space. But yeah, I was just wondering about that.
Well, we haven't really developed the area of the monetary commercialism of all this. Probably could use it, but we just haven't. Our focus has been on teaching and, not on making money. We never really set out to make money. We set out to make a difference. But I'm not averse to having more money to support it. That's always a good idea. It's always been, we've not been really funded by anything other than tuitions and occasional donations. So it keeps it at a kind of low level. And that's probably a good idea. The evolution of the whole metaverse and the virtual world is fascinating to me because, if you look at what we've got right now, what's available in the most sophisticated virtual world stuff, I mean, complete with the VR goggles and the gloves and all the rest of it, some of which I experienced down there in Guatemala. I believe you introduced me to some of that. And I can imagine if this is where we are right now, what's it going to be like in another 10 years or 100 years or 1,000 years? I mean, wow, the possibilities are really into creating another level of reality, another matrix. And, many people identify with the theory of that we are ourselves living in a virtual world that is created somehow by collective consciousness or whatever, but that this world is also a simulation. And we're getting to where we can create our own simulations at another level, and those will become more and more prominent. And when we look at the possibility of other civilizations in the galaxy, that may be thousands or millions of years ahead of us, the possibilities for reality shifting and reality creation are profound and staggering. The implications are really astonishing.
Yeah. Have you Um, have you heard of the Gnostic theory of the archons?
Well, yes, but not enough that I could expound on it.
Yeah, well, um, they basically found these scrolls, the scroll catches in the Israel. One was called the Nag Hammadi catch, and the other one, the Dead Sea Scrolls. They're probably about 50 miles apart. The catches, and these were basically, I think you would call them Essenes, that stashed the scrolls to, when the Romans were wiping out people.
Right.
And if you read those scrolls, they're like unedited Bible basically, and Apocrypha, and they basically say that we're in a simulation, and they call the beings behind it archons, which means old rulers, and they said the head archon is named pretty much Yahweh, and the Abrahamic religions are praying to Yahweh, which is that Old Testament, jealous, angry God. So the Gnostics, called that out and said, "Hey, you're praying to this automata. That's not God." And then you have the Inquisition started to wipe out the Cathars in France that believed this stuff. So, they basically persecuted everyone that believed these things, down to like one last copy of their book and this catch in the Dead Sea, now it's online. Like, it's like literally like one copy left, and now it's on the internet. So people were kind of getting the memo that was
Right.
burned.
Well, I am familiar with the history, not quite as much with the teachings and stuff, which haven't interested me as much as other mythologies of the world, but I am familiar enough with that to know that stuff. The thing that's really interesting is how many times vast amounts of knowledge that have been lost by this way and come down to a single manuscript somehow that's been preserved. And what about the ones we didn't get even that? The destruction of the Library of Alexandria is devastating. The destruction of the libraries of Tibet, of the monasteries that have kept stuff alive, the destruction of many the libraries of the Aztecs, the Mayans in particular. To lose all of this stuff is a precious resource, and they're just in some cases we only have tiny little bit of a single manuscript, like the Popol Vuh is the only manuscript we have of the Mayans. The Epic of Gilgamesh, comes down to us in just a few little fragments, and it represents a vast amount of information is embedded in that. Beowulf, the whole saga of Beowulf, which is fabulous saga story, came down in a single manuscript that was almost lost. It was just kind of passed around in a few monasteries and nearly destroyed, and only recovered by a fluke. How many others, things like this? We didn't even get that. We don't even get a single copy because it's very precarious. I think this is such an important part of human culture, is our ability to pass down to succeeding generations our knowledge. I read an interesting article recently on octopuses, and the question was, well, if they're so intelligent, which they are highly intelligent, is there any chance that they may develop a culture and a civilization eventually? And the problem is no, because the process of giving birth to the next generation kills off the previous generation. The mother octopus dies before her eggs hatch. She has to take care of them, and then she eats her own tentacles, and she destroys her body in the process of keeping the eggs going until they're ready to hatch, which is quite intense. And then she dies. So she never passes on any knowledge that she may have acquired to the next generation. And this is simply built into into the concept. What we have going for us, it started with developing language and speech and oral traditions, but when we figured out how to write things down and record them and to be able to pass them down to future generations over millennia, as we've been able to do, this is a profound leap forward that has given us an advantage over every other creature on the planet. Not that we're necessarily smarter than whales or dolphins or, other creatures that may be up there. Even chimps and gorillas and dogs and octopuses and African gray parrots are really in the intelligence level of human children. But they don't have a language and a way of passing down things to the next generation. There's no transmission.
Yeah, I just saw a article myself on Minecraft, which is a pretty popular game. I don't play it, but my kids do. And there's a library. Somebody built like a library, and like every repressed, piece of literature that people need to be reading that they don't have access to, they put in that library. So they made like a digital Alexandria, like in Minecraft. So that's kind of why I like the crypto stuff, because it promises like a more immutable, more it allows for storage of information in a way that people can't really mess with it, So
well, that's great, until of course we get an EMP. The thing is that we can still read Egyptian stuff that was written on papyri, 3,000-4,000 years ago. We can read ancient Sumerian stuff that was engraved in clay tablets 5,000 years ago, and we can still read that stuff. It's still around, but we cannot read things that were written on paper 100 years ago, because the paper deteriorates and falls apart, and it's made with acid stuff, and we're losing our contemporary libraries. Or just, I always think of that scene in the movie The Time Machine, where the time traveler goes to a library that's 8,000 years in the future, and he wants to know what happened, and there's still books on the shelf, and he reaches for a book and picks it up, and it just crumbles to dust in his hands, and that image has always stuck with me, because that's really what we're doing. And if right next to it there were cuneiform clay tablets, they'd still be there and still readable, but not our current literature, not our writing. And the electronic stuff is even worse. One EMP and it's all gone.
Yeah, I really like my Yoruba lineage, because the tradition there was to pass the information orally, so the whole system is intact. And
unless the last person who knows the stuff dies, which has happened to many cultures, and their oral traditions have simply been lost entirely, of the Druids and many Native American peoples, that their tribes were wiped out by conquest or disease or whatever, and the last storyteller, who is the preserver of that knowledge, dies without passing it on. That's it, and it's gone.
Yep, true that. Woo! So do you have a library in the Second Life where you guys are storing the knowledge?
And I don't believe that we do. I'm not quite sure how one would do that, but it's an interesting concept. I'm not sure we don't, but I'm not aware that we do. I think that we reference all of our books and in textbooks and stuff like that, or either electronic or hard copy copies for it. But I don't believe that we have anything in a library in Second Life that you could go to. But it's probably a good idea to start doing that.
Yeah. So you mentioned a conclave in New York. What is a conclave?
A conclave is what we call a gathering, a Grey School gathering. It's folks come together. We have we've had different kinds. We've had campouts, which take place somewhere there's a campground, and then it involves teachings and classes and campfire in the evenings and stargazing and storytelling and lessons and nature walks and making things, usually things like wands and staffs that are really good to make out of natural materials. And it's just a get together for the school. We have to, in order to have a conclave, we have to have a couple of actual teachers available. So I'm one of them, and I get taken around the country to attend these. But other local teachers are also, and they're really quite neat. I think that they're a lot of fun and very instructive, and everybody loves them.
Awesome. Well, if you have any links for me to share with the audience, please send those to me, and I'll include them in the show notes, so that everybody can get your info and interface as needed.
All right, I'll send you a batch of links for some of the stuff that would be hopefully useful. That would be great. Like I said, you can just Google me. I've got a Wikipedia page, and if you just put Oberon Zell in, you'll come up with probably thousands of references. But I do have a Wikipedia page, and it lists my things. I have a personal website, oberonzell.com, and there's the Grey School, greyschool.com, and all of my books are available on Amazon. So you just type my name into Amazon books and you'll get it. So it's really not that hard to find me and my work. It's all over the place, but I will send you specific links.
Sweet. One last question. We're hitting about an hour now, so I won't keep you any long. I remember you telling me about your name, Oberon, but if you could remind me how that name came to be. I looked it up. It means bear, it would seem. But how did you fall into that name?
The reference in my case comes from Shakespeare's delightful comedy play Midsummer Night's Dream, where Oberon is the king of the fairies, and his wife is Titania, the queen, and it's it's a neat name that I have always enjoyed, but I've never actually applied it to myself. I had a cat named Oberon, and we named one of our unicorns a miniature unicorn. We called him Oberon because he was our fairy unicorn, but I never thought about taking the name. And that was actually just given to me by somebody who was visiting us. At that time, I had been going by the name Otter, which I had been given by an encounter with a wild otter in the wild, which is very profound. And so I bore that name for a number of years, from 1979 till 95, really. And then I had this meeting with a woman who was a namer for the Rajneesh community. That was what she did. People would come into the community and they would always have to take a new name. And she was one of the people who would give them their new name. And that's what she did. And when she met me, she said, when I see you, I don't see an otter. I see Oberon. And the way that came down just struck. I felt like a mantle descended from the clouds and wrapped itself around my shoulders, and from that point on, that was my name. It's not one that I chose or selected, and there was a bit of controversy about it in the first place because Morning Glory did not want to be identified as Titania, and she being my wife, that would have been the logical thing. But as she said, a woman with a 42-inch bust, has no business calling herself Titania. And so she continued to be Morning Glory. And so we eventually reached an acceptable place with that, but it was not an easy transition, especially for her.
Well, it's been awesome reconnecting with you. I just got a property in East Texas out in the pine forest, and we're making shrines and temple space and all that stuff. So if you ever in Texas or want to do something in Texas or come back to Guat, let me know. Mi casa, su casa.
Well, that's wonderful. I appreciate that. I love it. I certainly really enjoyed our hospitality when we were down in Guatemala, and I do have people in Texas. Obviously, Donna is still there. She's been doing the Texas Renaissance fairs for over 40 years now. That's where we first met 40 years ago. It was at the Texas Renaissance Festival when I was there with a unicorn, and I met her. So I have roots there in Texas, and one of our family members of our expanded family lives in Austin and is worth visiting periodically. So I may be there, and if it's so, I'll look you up.
Awesome. All right. Well, you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks for joining me on this. I will edit it, send you a copy, and if anything, if you have any commentary, like be sure and share it to your network if you feel called. Yeah, thanks for coming on. I love your work. I'm a big fan, and I will make sure and propagate these books and everything else that you've done. So.
Well, thank you, Baba John. And in fact, I might mention briefly in passing that I'm doing a monthly podcast of my own called The Ides of Oberon, and it's, as the title suggests, on the 15th of every month. And I'm doing that in conjunction now with the Grey School. So that's something else that's going on there. So folks might want to tune into that. Anyway, thank you. It's been a delight visiting with you again after all this time. And good on you for this.
Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed that interview. Check out his links in the show notes. I'm going to put a link to the Apprentice Grimoire from my bookshop. If you would like to support the show, you can buy that one at the show's bookshop. And make sure and like, follow, and share if you feel so compelled. Enjoy the rest of your week. And I'm going to be traveling this month. I've got a conference in Austin. Probably have some good interviews later on in the month. But that's it for now. Many blessings and love you.